Hi, and welcome to Building with Barry, Habitat Buffalo's how-to video series that empowers families to care for their own homes. I'm Barry Weiss. Today we're going to be talking about a really common issue in a lot of homes, which is a leaky sink. Specifically, we're going to be talking about the P-trap. This is what this looks like. This is the part of the drain that takes the water from the sink and then out to the main drain. There are a lot of reasons why your P-trap might leak. Someone could have grabbed onto it by accident when they were doing some work under the sink. These nuts could have gotten cross-threaded from a previous repair. And sometimes, honestly, things just work themselves loose. If it's unresolved, there can be water damage that happens to the bottom of your cabinet. And worst case scenario, if water is accumulating there and not taken care of, it can lead to mold growth. And so fixing your P-trap can be a simple fix that prevents a lot of future damage to your sink cabinet and to your home. So these are the tools and materials that you might need for this repair. Here we have the components of the P-trap itself. In fact, this is the trap. This is the trap arm. There's a little nut that goes on here that connects into here. We'll show you later. This is called the tailpiece extension, and this gets cut to a custom fit that connects the trap to the sink drain. Here we've got another nut that connects the trap arm to the trap adapter or directly to the drain that goes down to the main drain. There will likely be standing water inside the existing trap, and so I always recommend having a bucket on hand and some towels, paper towels, or in this case I just had some toilet paper. And then these are the tools that you may need. Some type of pipe wrench, so we have an actual pipe wrench here, and then channel locks in case it's hard to get the nut off of the existing trap by hand. You can use those. A hacksaw in case you need to cut the tailpiece extension, tape measure, and Sharpie for measuring and cutting, or for measuring your cut. And that should be pretty much everything that you need. You'll see this little green guy here too. This is a washer. There's a few of those in there too. So this is an interesting vanity here. It's got drawers instead of cabinet doors, but it just makes it a little bit more complicated for me. If you were using a standard vanity that had doors, you would just have to open them, but here I've got to remove these drawers. I couldn't get my bucket to fit in here, so I'm just going to take this guy, which I had as a backup, slide it down and put it underneath to catch any overflow water that comes out of the pipe. Now, a couple prep things we want to do before we get started is we want to shut off our supply lines so we don't get tempted to run the water when we take the trap off and the water would just go everywhere. I'm also going to stop the drain from above, which you're not going to see, but it's going to prevent any water that gets in there or any small parts from going down the drain. So now we've got our bucket set up. We've got the sink drain exposed. So here we have a pretty good view of what the whole existing trap assembly looks like. You've got the sink drain coming down here into the tailpiece. This is called the tailpiece extension. This was cut to a specific size. We've got the trap and a couple of these nuts with washers inside of them. Got our trap arm, and then it goes out to the adapter and down to the drain. We're going to start evaluating where that leak is coming from. Now, at this point, if you do have an issue, you've probably already seen where it's coming out of, but if not, what you want to do is run your water and just start to figure out exactly where you see water dripping down from. I want to make sure that everything here is nice and tight and snug. In fact, you should just do that with all of your fittings before you move forward, and now you can run water through it again and see if any leaks are coming out. So for the sake of this video, we're going to say that there's a leak coming from this joint right here. So the first thing we want to do, like I said, make sure that it's tight, run water through it again. If it still is leaking, we're going to have to take this assembly apart. So we're going to go through that really quickly. It's pretty simple. Everything should be finger tightened. If it's not, that's what we have the wrenches in our tools, our optional tools for this job for. And this is our actual trap. Now, if you've been using the sink, there's going to be water in here. I've already drained this one out. But that's what the bucket is for. Don't get tempted to dump it into the sink above you or it'll come right back down. So now what we're going to be looking at is the nuts and the threadings for this piece here. I'm going to try and get a good shot where you can see the threads. There, you can see the threads there. So a common issue is that the threads on the trap have gotten cross-threaded, meaning when this nut was put on, it wasn't put on flush, it was put on at an angle and then forced in. And now these threads don't line up and water can find its way through there. So if this is cross-threaded, we'll have to replace it. Another issue that you could have is just that the tailpiece extension is not long enough. And sometimes if you don't have enough of this tailpiece coming into the trap, it can work its way loose and water can come out through there. So A is we'll have to just replace the trap if this was cross-threaded here, or B would be that we have to cut a longer tailpiece extension. We're going to show you how to do both. So the original trap that I'm replacing is 1.5 inches in diameter, and the trap that I'm replacing it with is 1.25 inches. It's just what I bought. It's always 1.25 inches coming out of a vanity sink. So rather than use a reducer that gets us from the 1.5 inches to the 1.25 inches up here, I just put the 1.5 inches to 1.25 inches reducer back here at the adapter. So, but typically you'll just evaluate what size you need and go by the same size. This is just an added step from me trying to jump the gun here. So I'm going to replace the trap arm, and I've got, this is what a 1.5 to 1.25 inch reducer looks like. I'm going to do a few things here with the trap arm. First thing is I am going to take one of the nuts and I'm going to put it onto the trap arm so that when the trap ties into this, the nut is already on it. Then I am going to take another 1.5 inch nut. In your case, you'd put on whatever nut goes with this. And I'm going to take my reducer here. Okay, I'm going to insert this trap arm into the trap adapter, and I'm just going to give this a nice little one or two twists here just to get it so I can pull it in and out as needed, but not completely tightened yet. And now we can do what we call a dry fit. So we're going to take the shorter end, we'll tie into our trap arm, and there's a little flare fitting that just fits nice and snug into there. And we're going to pull our nut down and very carefully thread it in place. This is a really important place to pay attention to what you're doing because you don't want to force the threading on here. If you force it, you might cross thread it. There you go. And when you don't force it, it will turn very easily a bunch of times. And now we're locked into place. Now what we want to do is line these two up so that we can see what the gap is between our trap and our initial tailpiece. So in order to figure out what full length our tailpiece extension needs to be here, what I'm going to do is just measure the gap between these two, which is about 2.5 inches. I'm going to add 3 inches to that. The reason being that if we have a 2.5 inch gap, we want to give ourselves enough room additionally for the original tailpiece to go into the extension, but also for this piece of the extension to fit down into the trap. And that'll give us some room for adjustment as well. We don't want it to be too short or it's not going to catch on. We don't want it to be too long, or you can see there's little stops here. It won't fit and it'll force everything in the wrong way. So we're going to measure this piece and cut it and get it into place. Okay, so now we have our tailpiece extension. We'll see if it's the right size. The first thing we want to do though before we put it on is just, again, just like we did with the trap arm, we want to put on a nut first, followed by one of our washers. A quick note about the washers is they are tapered. You always have the tapered side going into the female end, so it's pointing down or towards the direction of the drain. So we're going to slide all this up here I'm going to put this one up on to here, which already has that piece on there, and we're actually going to have to take this off again, slide this onto here, and fortunately this little crossbar has given us a little bit of trouble, but we made it, and that looks like it fits perfectly. So you'll see we have some room to go up and down on here. That's exactly what we want. We've got all of our washers here. We've got a tailpiece extension that fits. We're just going to make all of our connections again. Again, this is crucial because if we cross thread now, we have to redo all that work. So just make sure that you're getting these to thread on easily. Do everything finger tight at first. And then go ahead and tighten. Little trick of the trade here real quickly. Make sure that you push up on this as high as it'll go. What that'll do is it'll elevate the tailpiece, or rather the trap arm, to make sure that you get a downward pitch going down into the drain. That'll allow the water to come up and flow down into it. If you lower this too far, the water might want to come back and just sit in the trap. Okay, we don't want to over tighten these, and we don't want to use a wrench when we're tightening them because it is just plastic, and a wrench will give us too much leverage and it can just bust right through those threads as well, cross thread it, or even just break the nut. Again, we just want to make sure that everything is nice and snug and watertight. Okay, now we're going to test it, and we want to make sure that our water supplies are on. I'm going to plug the sink from above and turn it on. Now I'm running warm water in here, and right now there's no water going through the system. I like to fill the sink up a little bit and then drain it all at once so that there's more pressure going through the system and we'll find any leaks rather than just having a small drip go through. So we're going to let it fill up for a minute. I also like to use warm water because I find that it's easier to feel small drips of it rather than cold water, which you just might be able to feel through the pipe and you may think there's a leak where there's not. Okay, we're going to get a really satisfying rushing sound of water coming down here when I pull the plug. And there are no leaks. So by disassembling it and cutting a new tailpiece extension, we have shown you how to measure and cut for a tailpiece extension, how to replace the P-trap itself if you need to, and then how to reassemble the whole thing and test it. So there we have it. Hopefully you learned a few ways to resolve some leaky sink issues on your own. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Building with Barry. I'm Barry Weiss. We'll see you on the next one.